Good morning, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed that video and that it gave a pictorial caption of the key focus areas for Aecon's sustainability program, which we'll be discussing in more detail today. For those of you tuning in from outside of Aecon, I'm Gordana Trakalis, Senior Vice President of Human Resources, and I'm pleased to be moderating today's panel. Before we get started, I want to say right off the top that if we do run into any technical difficulties, we ask for your patience and understanding. We'll do our best to ensure a smooth event, but if we do run into something, we'll keep you posted either here or through your inbox. If you'd like to submit a question to be answered following the panel discussion, just check the question icon on the Teams app and you should be able to get through that way. For anything we can't get to today, we will try to follow up at a later point. Additionally, with June being National Indigenous History Month, I want to also acknowledge that Aecon's head office in Toronto is located on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and it is now home to many diverse nations, Inuit and Métis communities. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Our employees and many of you tuning in today know what we do as a company. Through our work in construction and infrastructure development, we are nation building. Aecon is proud to build the communities in which we live and work, but most importantly, to do it sustainably. For today's panel, I'm joined by a few of my colleagues who are ready to have a fruitful discussion and answer some questions around sustainability at Aecon. With me today is Jean-Louis Severance, our President and Chief Executive Officer, Yoni Fushman, not only our Chief Legal Officer, but last year he was also appointed as our Chief Sustainability Officer. Prab Banga, our Director of Sustainability, who spearheaded Aecon's 2020 Sustainability Report, which we're here to talk about today. And Eric McDonald, one of my favorite executive committee members and head of the Aecon Utilities Operating Sector, which is doing some of the most innovative work across the company when it comes to sustainability. Before I get the discussion going, I'd like to start by saying that Aecon has long been a sustainable organization. From connecting communities to clean energy projects, working around endangered species for decades, and spearheading forward-looking programs focused on diversity and inclusivity, we've been working sustainably day in and day out. As we've evolved, though, we now have a true consciousness of sustainable practices. Backed by specific targets and goals, we are now more clearly defining who we are as a sustainable company. So let's dive right in. My first question is for you, Jean-Louis. As CEO of a publicly traded company that prioritizes shareholder value, how do you integrate sustainability into Aecon's business strategy?
Thank you, Gordana. At Aecon, we are mindful of the risk associated with climate change, but also the opportunities created in building the infrastructure of a better tomorrow, and the infrastructure are the core competency of Aecon. Evidently, we just realized a few years ago that we needed a sustainability strategy. Most of our clients, most of our investors, when they speak with us, want to know about our strategy, want to know about our actions and about our results related with sustainability. So it's for us quite important. Evidently, we all know now that resources on Earth are scarce, that our planet is fragile, and the way we build infrastructure is extremely important to try to go forward. So we are embarked in this journey with a lot of enthusiasm, evidently to create value for our shareholders, but also to have a better Aecon.
Thank you, Jean-Louis. Yoni, tell us about your role as Chief Sustainability Officer, and how did a Chief Legal Officer also become Head of Sustainability?
Sure. So I think one of the many things that sets Aecon apart is that we're a publicly traded construction company. So that gives us the benefit of really getting plugged into the market of what the biggest companies in Canada and the world are doing. And so what we do from the public company side and in supporting the board is we're always monitoring trends that are evolving. And a few years ago, we saw, you know, there's discussion about sustainability, but the pace was really picking up rapidly. And and it was becoming more real, and technology was evolving, investor expectations were evolving. So, we started a discussion at the board level, and very quickly the board and senior management all got onto the same page that this was a real opportunity for us. Something that we needed we had a story to tell, and we needed to get better at telling the story and start, embedding sustainability in the way we do things. And, in terms of the leadership of it, I suppose because I was the one who was talking about it the most, it sort of was a natural fit, but it seemed off to have the function, from an optics perspective, report into a chief legal officer, because that really makes it look like it's a disclosure and compliance exercise, and it's really not. It's about embedding these principles and methods and decision making into the business. And so it's essentially a separate hat, a separate function. Yes, I'm the chief legal officer, but when I, put my chief sustainability officer hat on, and a lot of times when I'm on calls with, technology companies or clients, I only introduce myself as Chief Sustainability Officer, and Prav and I are kind of a tag team. We're sort of, from that perspective, a department of two, just focusing on what we're already doing that's great, and then how to continuously improve in this area.
Yeah, that makes sense, Yoni. I know you've been passionate about sustainability for a long time, so thanks for that. We recently released our second annual sustainability report called Building Better Together. Why did you choose this theme?
Well, I didn't. I chose we build the best, coolest projects with the most awesome people for the best clients with really great communities. The marketing people said that was taken, so we had to pivot. No, seriously, it resonated last year, especially. I mean, everybody knows what we all went through, and we all went through it together. I like the expression that I heard last year, that we're all in the same storm but different boats, and I think everybody kind of had their unique experience, but there really was a sense of togetherness. And I know for us at Aecon, we're all over the country, and some of us were working remotely, some of us never left the site. But we all had a sense of common purpose and togetherness. It resonates with something Jean-Louis always said: together we are stronger. And really, if you go to a construction site, construction is such a team sport, and it's kind of marvelous when you can stand back and just watch a crew or a couple of crews together working in sync, everybody supporting each other, just non-verbally, just here you go, and it just all works. And then especially in the sustainability journey, it's not something that we can do ourselves. It's something that we do, internally with the collaboration of our own people, externally with the support of government and clients and vendors. So it really is about togetherness, and it's a very succinct way of pulling that theme together.
That's great. Thanks, Yoni. I'll turn to Prav now. Can you give us some key highlights from the report? What were Aecon's major sustainability achievements in 2020?
For sure. So the 2020 report itself was our second sustainability report. Our first one, which was released in 2019, really focused on establishing the foundation of sustainability in the company, whereas the 2020 report really focused on starting the narrative about operationalizing sustainability in the organization. So the 2020 report included information about the programs and initiatives that we're implementing and how we're operationalizing sustainability across the three pillars of sustainability: environmental, social, and governance. We also augmented our SASB materiality assessment and did our own research about what our stakeholders and shareholders are looking for in terms of what should be reported in a sustainability report. And we also did some benchmarking out against our peers as well to ensure that we're reporting on the sustainability issues that are most material to our industry. The report itself focuses on 4 pillars: so people, environment, community, and governance. Under the people pillar, we talked about our first diversity and inclusion census that was completed in 2020. Under the environmental pillar, we talk about our GHG emissions inventory, which was conducted in 2020, and it's very unique to the construction industry, and as well as the announcement of our GHG targets, which we'll talk about further later. Under the community pillar, we talked about some of our new innovative community joint ventures, such as a pilot project with United Way Greater Toronto to catalyze local economic development, as well as we discussed the expansion of our procurement program for Indigenous owned businesses. Under the governance and ethics pillar, we expanded our anti-bribery and anti-corruption training programs and introduced new tools for anonymous reporting of ethics concerns. We also fortified our sustainability leadership team, which included hiring myself.
Excellent.
Gordana, maybe you go on. I don't know what the rules are of the panel, but Prab mentioned the people side, and that's obviously your purview. Maybe you can talk a little bit about diversity and inclusion and what your group has been up to there.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks, Yoni. I'd say 2020 was, for many reasons, one of the most difficult years we've had, and you know, with a urgent call for racial justice and the attention that was put on equity, diversity, inclusion across society from institutions and businesses like us, our efforts in this area were catapulted, and we had extraordinary support from our executive team. And we did some great things in addition to the census that Prab referred to, which is important because it helps us benchmark how we're doing in this area. And I was really happy to see that the results this year over last year showed that we are making some real tangible progress in this area. But we also, in 2020, through our Diversity and Inclusion Council that's made up of extraordinary individuals in the organization, introduced employee resource groups for the first time. And these groups are made up of employees at Aecon who are focused on understanding and helping to enhance the experience of our employees who identify as people of color, Indigenous, women, people who are differently abled, and members of the LGBTQ2+ groups who, by the way, are celebrating Pride Month this month. So happy Pride to those employees. So they've done a tremendous job in the last year and going forward and driving our strategy. We're really thankful for all the work that they've done. Last year, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the extraordinary work that our Aecon University team has done in leading the development and rollout of several diversity related e-learning resources. We had to go online last year due to the pandemic. So a number of self-directed and instructor-led courses, as well as for our thousands of workers in the field who didn't skip a beat during COVID, the pandemic, on the ground toolbox talks specifically focused on ED&I in the field. These have been really important and have complemented work that we've done before 2020, especially around Aecon Women in the Trades. I know many people have heard us talk about that. And that's an extraordinary initiative that was actually led by my colleague here today, Eric McDonald, in partnership with LIUNA. And this program is dedicated to helping women kickstart their careers and get hands-on training, mentorship, and real field experience with Aecon. And I don't mind mentioning that it also was so successful that it prompted us to launch a spin-off called the Aecon Diversity in the Trades program, which helps to increase participation of BIPOC individuals in construction. So we've been at it for a long time. I'd say, again, at the foundation of our work in this space has been Aecon's effort to be a leader in creating meaningful and mutually beneficial relationships with our Indigenous communities. So lots happening over a long period of time, and 2020 definitely a concentrated year for us that we're proud of.
Okay, I'll give the baton back to you, Gordana.
Thanks, Yoni. So Eric, I'll maybe turn to you now, seeing as you are one of my favorites and you are the champion of one of my favorite programs at Aecon. As the head of our Aecon utilities sector, your team has made significant progress in implementing and advancing sustainable initiatives. The Aecon Training and Innovation Center has been pivotal. How does this facility make a difference for our operations?
Thank you, Gordana. So I'll first start by saying full disclosure that there is work ongoing here at Carlson Court. And if you hear any banging or drilling in the background, that is just the Aecon Buildings team preparing Carlson for the return of our folks at some point in the future. So I apologize if you hear any of that in the background. But as for Holland Landing, the Training and Innovation Center, I'll first say that that center was created for everyone at Aecon. So at times it's been referred to as the Aecon Utilities Training and Innovation Center. Nothing could be further from the truth. It was built really for everyone, and it was built for a couple of different purposes. And one was to provide training, to augment the training provided by universities, colleges, by training provided from unions. And so really to become an employer of choice, to ensure a high level of safety for our teams, we believe that we needed to create a facility where we could safely train them to a much higher level. And so that was our first priority, our people and their safety. The second part of it, the innovation part, is really interesting. We think it's unique across the construction industry, and really it's given us an environment where we can test out new technologies, that we can trial new processes, all in the safety and confines of that facility. Now, there's something you should be aware of. That facility should not, you should not view it as a brick and mortar facility. In this day and age, we had to create it twofold. One, to provide virtual training to any corner of Canada or internationally where our folks are working. So it was constructed that way. We built a dedicated fiber line to the facility so that we have some of the highest speeds in Canada to ensure that we can create and beam training content, beam out messages to our folks wherever they may be working. And so I wanted to maybe just highlight that even within the last 2 weeks, to show you the strength and power of what a training and innovation center can bring. Just in the last couple of weeks, we've trialed a number of different initiatives. One is something called laser ablation. So that is where we brought in a 300 kilowatt laser to clean and prep pipe for our pipeline activities that we do. So that cuts down on the amount of waste that we're creating. It creates a safer environment for the workforce as opposed to sandblasting. They have a laser that cannot harm human skin at all, but can blast the rust and dirt off a pipe. So laser ablation. We also just brought in a new drill, a new geothermal drill, and have drilled 3 deep boreholes at about 600 feet in the facility. So it gave us an opportunity to bring that drill in and to really test and commission it in the safety of that environment versus shipping it out to a job site and working through some of the challenges of a brand new piece of equipment, training new crews on that. So that's another great benefit of that facility. And the last one really that we just received within the last 2 weeks is a simulator for directional drilling. So we can now bring in our directional drill force and do competency assessments, train them to a very high standard, all while they're working in the classroom, working in a safe environment on a simulator. So that kind of, that's just 3 examples of what that team, and I think I'd like to highlight as well, that the person running that facility, Adrienne Clark, her and her team have done an amazing job of taking a vision for that facility and turning it into reality. So a shout out for Adrienne and her team. And lastly, Gordana, I may be using up my time here, but what else we're very proud of is we're able to point to that facility and show the power of sustainability. So working with Prob and working with some of our operations teams and vendors and customers, that facility now has a bifacial solar array. It now has a battery backup system. And now with those 3 deep hole boreholes, we will be getting our thermal energy needs from the ground. So very proud of that facility and the technology we have on display.
That's amazing, Eric, and I echo your comments about Adrian and the team. They have done an extraordinary job. It's quite. I have a huge degree of admiration for what the team has done, and you do such a great job of exuding your passion for this area that it's hard not to get excited about construction and innovation when you talk about it. And one of the things I hear you talk a lot about that I find fascinating is Geo Exchange. We know it's rapidly becoming the go-to technology for commercial, institutional, industrial clients who are looking to reduce their carbon footprint or optimize energy costs, eliminate fossil fuel dependence, and also meet their ESG targets. Can you tell us about what Aecon is doing in this market?
Absolutely, and to your point earlier, very, very proud of what our Geo Exchange team has been able to accomplish. But I will start with a short little primer on Geo Exchange. That may not be a term that you've heard every day, but the technology itself has been around for decades. And so when I explain this, I think of Justin French, who leads our Geo Exchange team. He has lectured me before that oftentimes I refer to it to geothermal. But there is a big difference between geothermal and what our team does in the Geo Exchange market. Geothermal is really focused on using the Earth's energy at very, very deep depths to tap into the Earth's crust and to generate electricity. And there's a couple of those projects going on across Canada right now, one in Saskatchewan and one in Alberta. But really, we're in the Geo Exchange end of it, where we're, for the most part, drilling in, they're deep to about 800 feet, but we're drilling in boreholes. We're then inserting plastic piping loops into there, and we're tapping into the constant temperature and the energy that the Earth provides to heat and cool buildings. And so, like I said, that technology's been around for decades, but really it's only been recently where there's been a renewed focus on it. There's been renewed investments and renewed opportunities from government grants and government incentives. And so Aecon wanted to be at the forefront of that. So about 2 years ago, Justin French, Tony Moody, Justin Cherry, again, another shout out for our exceptional Geo Exchange team, formed a new business to go after that market and have been very, very busy ever since. And in the interim, have added our own drills. And so we now have a full turnkey set of skills that we can service institutions and condo high rises. And in the future, we want to be in the residential Geo Exchange market as well. Across Canada, I'll throw out a few facts. Right now, about 70% of Canadians get their thermal energy needs from natural gas. So there's nothing wrong with that. We have customers like Enbridge that are in that market, and they're moving and pivoting very, very quickly to supply renewable natural gas and to inject hydrogen into their pipelines. But we also see a need to really balance the natural gas thermal energy with other solutions like geothermal. And so that's where Justin and his team comes in. We think there's a tremendous upside to that business. And we're seeing more and more opportunities come in every day. So that's it in a nutshell, Gordana.
Thank you, Eric. It's unbelievable. Really interesting. So we've referenced GHG targets a couple times throughout the discussion this morning, and Yoni, I wanted to come back to you because the release of our report was accompanied by the announcement of Aecon's own GHG targets. Can you tell us what these are?
Sure. So a few years ago, you started seeing some big companies say they were going to be carbon neutral 2050 and very aspirational. And some of the feedback we got in discussions with investors as recently as a year and a half ago was, that's not that interesting because it's so far away, and you're not really telling us anything about what you're going to do as a business. So in the last couple of years, the interest has pivoted to much nearer term targets. So we did set a 2050 net zero target, and there's a lot of reasons why we think we're going to get there. When you look at all sorts of technological developments where they are now, commitments of various producers like concrete producers and what they're doing, it's all coming together in a way that makes us think, that 2050 target is actually probably quite attainable, if not sooner. But the 2030 was the one that's more interesting and more meaningful and more real because it's right in front of us. 9 years is not that far away. We have to start doing things today to get there. And so we considered it very closely. Prab can tell us a little bit more about it probably, but it's worth noting we didn't really make that much of an issue of it in our releases about it. But the fact is, we're the only Canadian construction company, big or small, that's set that kind of a target. Even if you look broader to North America, there's only one construction company other than us that's set a target like that, and they're in a very different space than us, where frankly it's a lot easier to attain. So we really are out in front of the pack, and I just think it's important for people to recognize that. I know we have a mix of attendees, internal, external, that what Aecon's doing really is special in this space.
It sure is. Thank you, Yoni. Prab, I wanted to turn to you for a moment here and cover the fact that a key highlight from our 2020 report was the comprehensive GHG inventory from all of Aecon's operations, a best-in-class practice. Why did Aecon decide to undertake this inventory?
So both climate change and reducing greenhouse gas emissions are material sustainability topics for us and our stakeholders. So it's important for Aecon to play a role in the transition to a net zero economy. The first step to setting any sort of GHG emissions target is to understand where our emissions are coming from. So we conducted a thorough GHG inventory across all of our project sites, our facilities, our offices, to really get an understanding of where our emissions are coming from, the sources, and allow us to track the reduction over time. So the information that was presented in the inventory really helped to inform our GHG targets, as well as how to prioritize our actions to reduce our emissions. So our sustainability report talks about the inventory itself in detail, but also some of the actions that we're taking to reduce our emissions. And in terms of on how we're achieving some of the targets, there's really three key aspects. So one is looking at transitioning our fleet vehicles to electric and other low carbon options, which will make one of the biggest changes, because when we did the inventory, one of the highest sources of emissions for us is definitely fuel and diesel. So we're looking for ways to reduce our fuel consumption to be able to reduce our emissions. So vehicle conversion is at the top of our list. As well as when it comes to yellow iron and construction equipment, we're looking at not only upgrading the equipment that we already have and converting them to higher tiered engines which have lower emissions, but we're also looking at what other options are available on the market, such as electric and low carbon options. We really want to be at the forefront of adopting some of these new technologies in the construction equipment space and be able to trial them and see how they work and for our job sites. And then the third area is operational efficiency. So that's kind of our any sort of changes that we're making in order to reduce our emissions, such as using telematics to monitor our fleet, employee engagement, any sort of employee engagement to engage our employees to reduce emissions on construction sites, anti-idling campaigns. We're also exploring the use of biofuels as well, just to be able to test them out with our equipment and reduce emissions that way. And then lastly, we're also looking at other new technologies that are available on the market, such as solar powered generators, solar powered light towers, basically anything that you see on a construction site, whether it's stationary or mobile, we're looking at alternatives. We're trying to see what's available on the market. And really in 2021 and 2022, we want to harness any sort of new technology and be at the forefront of trialing and adopting this new technology.
Excellent. Thanks, Prab. Yoni, over to you. Are you seeing any sustainability trends that will impact Aecon's business? What opportunities do you see?
Yeah, a lot to say about this. I mean, one of the trends is just about velocity and acceleration in this space. It's still accelerating. Like we haven't gotten to a flat line yet, where it's just sort of a new normal has been established. It's almost daily where something is leaping forward. And sometimes that's investor interests and expectations. We're seeing it increasingly from clients, where the rate of change is increasing dramatically. Where you're seeing more and more RFPs come out that have a section about our sustainability program, which we never really saw before. The technology is evolving. There's this confluence where everything is starting to come together, and as it comes together, it starts kind of spinning faster. So it's one of the trends is just that everything's changing all the time, and that's why it's really important to have, especially somebody like Prab, who just thinks about this all day for us and is constantly in discussions with people from suppliers to clients to universities about just what's going on. And I've been on some of those calls, and it's amazing. They're the only calls where you're guaranteed to learn something new, guaranteed, whether it's a new company that you hadn't heard of, or some new technology, or just some method that somebody's using. It's just evolving so quickly. In terms of where the opportunities are, so Eric already talked about Geo Exchange, and what we're seeing is it's gradual, but every year we see a little bit more of the portfolio move into that renewable space, and we see more and more opportunities. And it's really kind of, they're leading indicators. It's not like there's this wholesale change. We're still seeing, mostly the same type of conventional work, but you're starting to see some leading indicators of hydrogen, for instance. And Canada has a hydrogen strategy. The degree of investment that's required is staggering to really install. It's an infrastructure program fundamentally. Like hydrogen is all about, like, where is the hydrogen coming from and how are you getting it somewhere? And it's just a massive infrastructure opportunity. So that's kind of medium and long term, but we're seeing some leading indicators of it. Some projects are coming out that are kind of advanced work for it. We've done some of that in terms of hydrogen blending projects that Eric's talked about. Battery storage is another one where we're involved with one of those opportunities, water treatment is kind of related. We see a lot of water treatment upgrading projects. So there's so much opportunity in this space. And one of the things that's interesting, we published this in our first report, is there's a study that basically talks about net winners and losers from climate change. And we're in an interesting position in the infrastructure space that, from a business perspective, there's certainly risk and unpredictable severe weather, as we've talked about in our report, is probably one of the bigger ones. But there, from a business opportunity, there's just a tremendous amount of opportunity for Aecon. Even existing infrastructure that was built, not that long ago, but to different expectations of weather, is going to have to be reinforced and made more resilient. So, there's a lot coming in terms of opportunity, and then trends that will impact us for how we build things. Prab mentioned some of them, but that's a space. It reminds me, like, I kind of grew up in the .com boom 20 years ago, where everybody was out there trying to have some new website. Everybody now today is coming up with some way to do whatever mundane thing that you do, to do it a little bit greener, and it's not all space lasers. Some of it's very kind of, it's not that, it doesn't move the dial that much, but there's this proliferation of technology companies out there that are trying to do things even on the margins to just do things in a lower carbon way. And the really interesting thing is, from a business perspective, almost all of those things align with a lower cost approach. So it's not like Aecon is going out there and saying we're investing piles of money because we just think it's good to do things in a greener way. Most of these opportunities that we're looking at are all cost effective. So you have this amazing win-win where we see the opportunity to kind of build greener projects that are in line with, you know, Canada's and the world's sustainability goals, and do it in a way that is more sustainable and more cost effective.
Amazing. I think one of the most exciting things about all of the opportunities that you summarized, Yoni, is that it creates this environment where it gives people an opportunity to think innovatively and creatively. And since Eric started the shout out trend, I think I'll continue and just call out Christina Perioris is the general manager in utilities, and she led the telematics initiative at Aecon, which was a huge innovation for us. And we've got a gentleman by the name of Ben Feltham, who is leading the introduction of integrated design here at Aecon. And so I'm just amazed when I talk to people about, sorry, it's digital design, just flipped my mind, but I'm just amazed when I talk to people about how much creativity exists in the organization. Such a great opportunity for us to lean into that. So thanks everyone. I'm going to turn to Jean-Louis here to close off our chat before we go to questions. And Jean-Louis, maybe you can cap us off and tell us a little bit about what you think we can expect to see from Aecon for the remainder of 2021.
Thanks, Jordana. For the remainder of 2021 and the years to come, I'm optimistic. First of all, being the CEO of a construction company, there's no alternative. If you're not optimistic, it's better to retire. Second point, the trend in Canada, it's about almost 500,000 newcomers every year. Those new people need new highways, new power plants, new transportation systems, new water treatment plants, everything that build Aecon. And it's a factor of optimism. Third point, I just can see that on our vectors to be better at Aecon. We have talked a lot about sustainability, but we have two other ones. The first one is about balancing our activity. We are well on our way. You probably remember, I mean, Aecon is balanced between concession and construction, not separated. We just think that we can be efficient, developing project, financing project, designing, building, and operating along the whole chain. So concession and construction. Within construction, we always try to be balanced between our different segments. Roads and bridges, urban transportation systems, heavy civil, nuclear, industrial and pipeline, utilities, and it's a very strong factor of resilience. So I'm happy about it. The third vector, it's about our operational excellence. We're working a lot on it. We're making efforts. We just want better than being the #1 Canadian infrastructure company. I mean, to be the best constructor in this country. And yesterday night, I mean, when I came back from the office, I took the Gardiner Expressway. We have just finalized the portion between Jarvis and Cherry. I mean, the work is astonishing in terms of quality. I just invite you just to go and drive it. It's astonishing. Built on budget, built on time, and even earlier than forecasted. Most of the job done during the night to avoid disturbances. It's a wonderful job. I mean, operational excellence is extremely important for us. Last point of optimism, it's probably the first time within the last 16 months that after something like 40 minutes, we have not even talked about COVID. So I'm optimistic about it. I mean, the rate of vaccination at Aecon is superior to the generic rate in the provinces where we operate, and it's good. From the beginning, we have been declared essential services, and we have performed from the first day as essential services. I'm extremely proud of all our people, all our frontline workers that have been working day and night, 7 days a week. And I'm, of course, extremely happy, not one single dead people at Aecon for COVID. It's getting better. So I just can see a good end of the year 2021 and good years to come.
Thank you, Jean-Louis. And thank you to Yoni, Prab, and Eric for taking part in today's panel. I think we had some really great discussion, and I look forward to our next sustainability panel being held in person. Can't wait to see everybody again. So we're going to switch gears now and move into the question period. As I mentioned off the top, questions can be submitted by clicking on the question icon on the Teams app. And so I will open up the chat box there and take some questions live, if there are any coming in.
Gordana?
Yes.
Gordana, while we're waiting for a question to come in, something that struck me was Yoni's comments about space lasers, and sometimes folks can get overwhelmed with all the information, all the news coming out. It all is forward looking. So hydrogen will arrive someday and batteries will arrive someday. So what I'd like to underscore here is that it's some of this is happening right now. And I wanted to highlight, just if I could have 2 minutes, I wanted to highlight a project that we're just wrapping up in the Markham area. So working for Enwave and at a Mattamy site in Springwater in Markham, called Springwater in Markham, we developed a Geo Exchange system there to feed 300 new homes. So if you're buying a new home in Markham, in Springwater, you're buying a home that's connected to a community Geo Exchange system. And the hope is that that becomes a template for every new subdivision that's built, not only in Ontario, but across Canada. And so the future is here and now. And so those people who are moving into those homes are at the cutting edge and forefront of sustainability. So we're very proud that Aecon was picked to be a partner and the contractor for that project.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Eric. We have an abundance of questions coming in. So let me see if I can pick up a few good ones here. Would the Geo Exchange effort allow us to expand Aecon's customer base? Eric, I suppose you can take this question.
You broke up there, Gordana. Can you repeat that?
Would our Geo Exchange strategy and effort allow us to expand Aecon's customer base?
Yes. Well, that's a complicated question, so I'm going to answer it this way: Aecon Utilities has prided itself on the fact that we have always stuck with our customers. And so we have a core group of customers, and as they have pivoted and moved into other areas, we've went with them. We hope that we've contributed to that pivot. And so part of it is that we'd like to go first and foremost to the customers that have always stuck with Aecon Utilities over the years. And many of these relationships go back 20 and 30 years. And those companies and clients have been at the forefront of Canada's energy needs, in some cases for more than 100 years. And so they really know the business. And at the same time, though, we also want to keep an open mind about future opportunities as well. We certainly always want to remain agile, but I would say first and foremost, we always look to our core clients first and try to construct solutions, and in this case, sustainable solutions for them first and foremost.
Excellent, thank you. Yoni, there's a question here specifically to you. Yoni mentioned that there is a constant stream of new greenwashed initiatives or offerings to make every mundane activity a little bit more sustainable. How does an organization like Aecon sort the wheat from the chaff on that while meeting investor expectations?
Really carefully. We're skeptical, right? I mean, construction is sort of a conservative business because everything is tried and true and tested for a long period of time, and you get comfortable with your means and methods and materials. And so it's not an industry that readily adapts eagerly to brand new stuff, because ultimately, you know, we're building infrastructure, we're building roads and bridges, and everything we do has to work for really generations. So when we see these new technologies, I think we approach them frankly with a mix of excitement and skepticism. And we vet them carefully. And if we, you know, Prab and I are going to endorse something to our operational people, you know, we want to be very comfortable that it's gonna work. But the area where we might take a little bit more risk is in a very small scale, right? So we're more than happy to try some new mix of concrete that has lower carbon associated with it on you know, a sidewalk rather than a bridge, right? So that's and the nice thing about what Aecon does is we have such a broad spectrum of types of work that we do. It's not hard to identify you know, relatively lower risk activities where we can trial some of this new technology.
Excellent, thank you. Follow-up question that ties in, I think, indirectly. So the comment was great achievement, thank you. Recycling can play a big role in construction, for example, construction debris, tires, etc. Is that considered in our plan?
Yeah, I would say waste is the next big metric that we're going to be looking at after emissions. And for construction, you know, you could even argue that it's more relevant to our business than you know, broader climate change. We're not a heavily there's not a tremendous amount of emissions associated with our business, but there potentially is a lot of waste. So, Prab, anything else that you would add to that?
Yeah, definitely our next area of focus is waste management. So similarly, how we conducted a GHG inventory, we're going to be doing a waste inventory just to get an understanding of the types of waste, and then basically develop a roadmap to reducing our waste.
Sorry, Gordana, if I could just use a real world example. So the Training and Innovation Center is actually taking offcuts. So these are pieces of plastic polyethylene gas pipe that typically would go to a landfill, and we're repurposing them and turning them into pipeline markers in the hopes that we can recycle some portion of the waste that we're creating in our gas distribution pipeline operation. So many people are already thinking about how we can prevent waste from getting to landfills and repurpose and upcycle our cutoffs.
Excellent. Thank you. Jean-Louis, maybe I'll pass this question over to you. We have a question from an anonymous attendee here. What are the Aecon plans to get into the hydrogen energy market?
Well, it's for me. I think it's extremely important to echo Yoni. Electricity and electric cars and is an important point, but my guess is that hydrogen is going to be even more important. So we definitely have to take our part. I mean, within this industry, we definitely have to think about it. It may be when we work on our urban transportation system about the train that can be used with hydrogen motors. It is a case in Europe. There's nothing at the moment really in Canada, so we'll have to have a look at it. But there's a lot of different opportunities. I mean, cars, evidently, I know that boats also are working a lot, I mean, to try to put on the market, I mean, boat manufacturers to put on the market this kind of propulsion. So evidently, hydrogen is going to be one of the most important points in the years to come. This being said, as we have noticed, I mean, there's a lot of new ideas coming every day. We just have to be careful. And to echo Yoni, I mean, we have a very precise idea about our first target. I mean, there's a minus 30% of CO2 for 2030. If you would ask me, I mean, do you have a precise idea about going to zero net emission for 2050? The answer is no, we don't have a precise idea. We just want to make it, and we are going to use as much as we can with a lot of enthusiasm, every technology that we can to reach it.
Thank you, Jean-Louis. So we have time for one more question, and actually, I'm gonna combine two questions that have come in here that are kind of piggyback off each other. First, from Alistair McCallum, our Senior Vice President of Finance, says some of us have a hard time looking out to 2030 or 2050. Jean-Louis, I think as you just described, you know, we can't be exactly precise about what we do that far out. But the question is, what does success look like in 5 years when it comes to our sustainability program? And the tag on that I'll add from another anonymous caller here is, as an Aecon employee, what can we do to contribute individually to the success of the initiatives here at Aecon and beyond? So the sort of around, what are the shorter term things we should be looking for and striving for, and how can people get involved? And I'll put that to any one of our panelists.
I'll start. Shorter term is better. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to move the dial, and you know, this is a little bit of a science experiment. We're still trying to figure out where all the levers are that we can pull that actually, you know, change the result. And we're at the front of that, but what we want to see is better. We have some idea of kind of modest gains we'd like to see over the next little while, but as long as we're you know, moving in the right direction and learning more about what we can do, you know, where we can pull a lever and get the most result. That's kind of that's what we're focusing on. And maybe I'd turn over to Eric or Prab to speak to kind of that individual contribution point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from an employee perspective, like as I mentioned earlier, the next couple years are really focused on pilots and trialing, and like Yoni said, it's almost like a science experiment. A lot of the new technologies that are out there to reduce emissions, that are greener options, are new on the market. So we want to be able to trial them on our construction sites. We also, from our employees who are doing this work, who are on the ground, we're looking for ideas from them. Some of the ideas that we're already implementing as trials, like the solar power generator, was an idea from one of our employees to replace the diesel power generator that was used. So those are the types of ideas that we're looking for. Like, I mean, you know, Yoni and I have a lot of conversations with vendors and universities and suppliers, but it's really our employees who are doing this work on a day-to-day basis who can really help support us and provide us with some of the ideas and some of the greener options that we can help pilot.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Prab. So it looks like we're coming up to the top of the hour. I have been monitoring. We've got about 30 questions in total. We'll make sure that we get that we capture these questions and get to respond to those of you who've submitted. So thank you. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for joining us this morning. Thanks again to Jean-Louis, to Yoni, to Prab, and to Eric for taking part in Aecon's first live sustainability panel. We will have a recording that'll be available next week, both internally on Aecon's intranet and externally at aecon.com/sustainability. So stay tuned for that and feel free to share it within your networks. That's all for now. Thanks again, everyone, and have a safe day.
Thank you.